The mayor's son, a 20-year-old in an expensive suit, shoved a 28-year-old blonde single mother outside the grocery store on a rainy day as her 7-year-old son, Dylan, stood frozen. He laughed as she tried to steady herself, his friends recording the humiliation on their phones. The small crowd looked away, unwilling to interfere with the town's untouchable elite. He thought his father's name made him invincible, but he made one fatal mistake. He didn't realize a Navy SEAL and his canine partner were just a few steps away watching everything, and that silence was about to end. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, subscribe for more stories of courage, loyalty, and justice. It was a gray Saturday morning in Aspen Creek, Colorado, the kind of mountain town where fog rolled down from the peaks and the smell of wet pine hung in the air long after dawn. The grocery store parking lot was slick with rain, puddles gathering beneath parked cars as people hurried to load their bags before the next drizzle. The overcast light softened everything, turning the scene into muted shades of silver and green. Emily Parker, the 28-year-old blonde single mother, pulled her hood tighter against the drizzle as she and her 7-year-old son Dylan crossed the lot toward their car. They'd just finished picking up a few essentials, milk, bread, and the kind of snacks Dylan always reached for first. She was unlocking the door when a voice cut through the quiet, too smug to ignore. Travis Reed, the 20-year-old mayor's son in an expensive suit, leaned against a black sports car parked crookedly across two spaces. His polished shoes splashed small ripples in a puddle as he smirked, flanked by two friends in varsity jackets who recorded on their phones. "Hey, Emily," Travis called, his tone slick and mocking. "Still pretending that little bakery job means something? Thought you'd be bagging groceries by now?" Emily froze, her car keys halfway to the lock. She turned slowly, pulse quickening beneath her raincoat. "Please, Travis," she said softly, "just leave us alone." The words came out trembling, and that was all he needed, a small show of fear. He grinned, stepping closer as water dripped from his cuff. "Aw, come on, don't be shy. You used to smile when my dad came into your shop. Guess that was before you forgot your place." His voice carried in the damp air, each word sharp as the rain starting to fall again. A few shoppers paused near the entrance, pretending to check their phones but not daring to intervene. Everyone knew who Travis was and who his father was. "She's not worth it, man," one of his friends muttered. But Travis ignored him, circling Emily like a predator with too much time and no conscience. "You think you can talk about my dad's projects and not pay for it?" he sneered. "I heard what you told that reporter. Maybe next time you'll remember who runs this town." Emily tightened her grip on the car door handle. She'd only spoken once offhand, to a journalist about the mayor's new development deal, pushing out small businesses. It was supposed to be anonymous, but in Aspen Creek, secrets never lasted long. "You're drunk," she said under her breath. "Go home, Travis." He laughed, loud and ugly, echoing against the metal roofs. "Drunk? No, just bored." Then he shoved her shoulder, hard enough that she stumbled into the side of her car. Dylan, still buckled inside, saw the hit and pushed the door open. "Mom!" he cried, voice cracking. The sound drew a few gasps from bystanders. "Travis, stop!" one of his friends hissed, glancing nervously toward the store windows. But Travis's pride was too big to back down. He straightened his tie, water dripping from his sleeves, and smirked. "Let them watch. Nobody's going to stop me." He was wrong, but he didn't know it yet. Across the lot, leaning against an old pickup truck with quiet composure, stood Cole Harris, the Navy SEAL. His steady eyes had been tracking every movement since the first shout. He'd seen men like Travis before, in war zones, in alleys, anywhere power turned cruelty easy. Beside him sat Rex, the K9, a 90-pound Belgian Malinois with a sleek tan coat and dark muzzle, sitting alert with his gaze locked on the commotion. Cole didn't move, but something behind his calm changed, the stillness before action. Emily steadied herself, voice shaking but firm. "You're making a fool of yourself. Stop." Travis smirked, stepping close enough for his breath to fog in the chill between them. "You embarrassed yourself the moment you thought you mattered," he murmured. He reached out toward her hair, and then froze. A low, even voice cut through the drizzle. "That's enough." The words came from Cole. They weren't loud, but they carried. Travis turned, his confidence flickering as he saw the broad-shouldered stranger approaching, boots splashing through the wet pavement. Rex moved with him, muscles coiled and silent. "Who the hell are you?" Travis demanded, forcing a laugh. "You with her or something?" Cole stopped a few feet away. "Doesn't matter who I'm with," he said evenly. "What matters is you walk away." His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made even Travis's friends exchange looks. "You got no idea who you're talking to," Travis said, though the edge had left his voice. "Yeah, I do," Cole replied, eyes steady. "The kind of man who hides behind his father's name." The crowd stirred. Travis's jaw clenched. "Get that dog away from me." "He doesn't move unless I tell him to," Cole said quietly. "And I haven't decided yet." The air felt colder suddenly, the drizzle heavier. One of Travis's friends tugged at his arm. "Come on, man, just drop it." But Travis couldn't. His pride wouldn't let him. He squared his shoulders. "You think you can threaten me?" "No," Cole said. "I'm warning you." Emily stood frozen, Dylan clutching her hand, eyes wide. The rain pattered on the car roof, the world holding its breath. Then Travis finally broke. He muttered something under his breath and turned away. His shoes splashed through a puddle as he climbed into his car, his friends following close behind. The engine roared, tires kicking up water as they sped off into the gray morning. The lot fell quiet again, just the sound of rain and a child's unsteady breathing. Emily turned to Cole, her voice soft and shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't have to, Cole nodded once, glancing down at Rex. "Yeah," he said. "We did." Dylan peeked out from behind his mother's coat, eyes wide with wonder. "Is he a soldier too?" he asked, looking at Rex. Cole gave a small smile. "He's the best one I've ever served with." By the time the gray light faded over Aspen Creek, Colorado, the story had already spread. It moved quietly through the town, like the mist that clung to the foothills, passed between grocery clerks, gas station attendants, and anyone who had been there to see Travis Reed shove Emily Parker in front of her frightened son. Most people pretended they hadn't seen it, afraid of what it meant to cross the Reeds. But by dusk everyone had heard about the stranger, the tall, quiet man with the slate-gray eyes, and the K-9 that moved like a shadow. Cole Harris, the Navy SEAL, had left the parking lot as calmly as he'd stepped into it. After Travis fled, he'd helped Emily to her feet, checked that Dylan was safe, and walked them to their car without a word about himself. He never gave his name unless asked. By the time Emily and her son reached their small rented house near the pine-covered edge of town, Cole and Rex were already gone, swallowed by the rain and the winding back roads. That night, the clouds hung low over Aspen Creek. Rain tapped against the windows of Emily's little home, steady and unrelenting. Inside, the warmth of the kitchen lights couldn't quite push back the unease. A child's drawing clung to the fridge beside a faded photo of her late husband in uniform. The air smelled faintly of baked bread, but her tea had long gone cold. She sat at the table, hands trembling slightly, as she replayed the afternoon, Travis's voice, the shove, the silence of the crowd, and the stranger who'd intervened. Across town, in a secluded cabin tucked against the tree line, Cole sat on the porch steps cleaning Rex's harness by lamplight. The rain came down in thin sheets, whispering across the roof. Rex lay at his side, ears twitching at every sound. "You did good today," Cole said quietly, running a cloth over the worn metal clips. The dog's eyes blinked slowly in response. Cole's mind lingered on what he'd seen, the arrogance, the fear, the power abused without consequence. He'd witnessed that same sickness overseas, where men convinced themselves their status made them untouchable. He looked toward the valley, where the faint glow of town lights blurred through mist. "We're not done here," he murmured. At the top of the hill in the mayor's sprawling home, another storm was brewing. Mayor Douglas Reed paced his office, rain streaking the windows behind him. When his son finally appeared, face pale, jaw tight, the air between them crackled with tension. "I didn't do anything wrong," Travis said, throwing his jacket down. "She was running her mouth about you again, and I—" "You assaulted a woman in public," Douglas snapped, his voice cutting through the room. "In broad daylight, with witnesses." Travis flinched but forced a grin. "It's fine. Nobody's going to talk." Douglas studied him coldly. "Somebody already did. About the man who stopped you." He paused. "He's not a cop. He's military. Special forces by the look of it. Now everyone's talking about him instead of you." He sank into his chair, voice lowering. "You made us look weak." Travis's confidence faltered. "So what do we do?" "We contain it," his father said. "We remind the sheriff where his loyalties lie, and we make sure that woman remembers her place." Sheriff Cal Bennett arrived an hour later, hat in hand, and rain dripping from his coat. "Heard your boy stirred things up again," he said, lowering himself into a chair. Douglas didn't look up. "You'll handle it, quietly, no reports, no charges, and if that woman causes trouble, make her regret it." Bennett nodded slowly. "And the other one, the guy with the dog, find out who he is," Douglas said. "If he's smart, he'll move on. If not, make sure he does." The sheriff's eyes narrowed slightly. "Men like that don't scare easy." "Then give him a reason to," Douglas replied. By morning, the town was cloaked in fog and rumor. Some said Travis had only argued with Emily. Others claimed she'd started it. The truth drowned beneath politics and fear. Yet at the diner on Main Street, where steam curled from mugs and gossip carried faster than the morning train, everyone was talking about the stranger. "He didn't even raise his voice," said a cashier who'd witnessed it. "Just looked at him, and that was enough. Like he knew." "Knew what?" asked the waitress, pouring coffee. "Knew how far the boy would have gone if he didn't stop him." That afternoon, the rain returned, steady, cold, and endless. Emily drove into town for Dylan's prescription, keeping her head low. The bell over the pharmacy door jingled softly, but as she entered, the quiet shifted. Conversations dropped. Eyes followed. She paid quickly and hurried out, clutching the paper bag. Outside, a familiar voice stopped her. "You all right?" Cole stood beside his truck, Rex sitting at his side, fur slicked with rain. His calm presence felt like an anchor in the storm. Emily managed a faint nod. "I'm fine," she said, though her shaking hands betrayed her. "Thank you again for yesterday." Cole's gaze flicked toward Dylan, visible through the car window. "He doing okay?" "He's scared," she admitted, "but I'm more worried about what comes next. The Reeds don't let things go." Cole nodded once, slowly. "Then you won't face them alone." He wasn't offering comfort, it was a promise. Before Emily could reply, Rex's ears pricked forward, body going still. Cole followed his gaze toward the end of the street, where a dark SUV crawled past. Its windows were tinted, its license plates blank. It paused just long enough to make its presence known, then continued down the road. "That's the mayor's car," Emily whispered, her pulse quickening. Cole's expression hardened. "Then you're right to be careful, but don't be afraid. Men like that feed on fear." He gave Rex a quiet command, and the dog relaxed, though his eyes never left the corner where the SUV had turned. Cole opened his truck door, rain dripping from his sleeve. "I'll keep watch," he said simply. Emily stood in the rain long after he'd driven off, watching the taillights fade into the mist. For the first time in a long while, she felt something stir beneath the fear, a quiet belief that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. By the next morning, Aspen Creek lay beneath a pale gray sky, the kind that pressed low and heavy, muting the color from every rooftop and pine. The calm felt strained, uneasy, a silence stretched too thin. Word of the grocery store incident still hung over the town, whispered between aisles at the hardware store and across the counter at the diner. Sheriff Cal Bennett, 47 and broad-shouldered, with thinning brown hair and mirrored sunglasses, parked his patrol car outside Emily Parker's small house just after sunrise. Rain clung to the windshield, beads catching faint reflections of the gray light. He sat there a moment, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel before stepping out, his boots crunching on wet gravel. Emily opened the door cautiously at his knock, her son Dylan peeking from behind her leg. The sheriff tipped his hat, his tone almost friendly. "Morning, ma'am. Just need to clear a few things up." There was a politeness to his voice that didn't disguise the weight behind it. Emily nodded warily. "I already told your deputy what happened. It was Travis Reed." Bennett sighed, removing his sunglasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. His eyes looked tired, not cruel, just used to compromise. "That's what I heard, but it's your word against his, and some folks say maybe you overreacted." Emily's pulse quickened. "Overreacted?" He shoved me in front of my son. The sheriff exhaled slowly. "Look, I don't write the rules, I just keep things quiet. Maybe it'd be easier if we called it a misunderstanding. Nobody gets hurt, nobody gets attention." Dylan gripped his mother's hand tighter. Emily steadied her voice. "You mean, pretend it didn't happen?" "Something like that," Bennett said. "The mayor wants this gone before it grows teeth. He's a reasonable man, but you don't want to test how far his patience goes. The Reeds don't forget." Emily took a slow breath, her fear hardening into anger. "Tell him I'm not afraid." The sheriff gave a short, humorless laugh. "You should be." He replaced his sunglasses and walked back to his car without another word. She watched the cruiser disappear through the mist, her chest tight, pulse hammering in her ears. Moments later, another engine rumbled up the driveway, an old pickup, streaked with mud and rain. Cole Harris stepped out, sleeves rolled, movement steady and unhurried. Rex followed, paws landing softly on the wet ground, ears perked. "Morning," Cole said, voice calm but alert. "Everything all right?" Emily tried to smile, but it faltered. The sheriff was here. He said I should drop it. Cole's eyes followed the tire tracks left by the patrol car. "That wasn't advice," he said. "That was a warning." He looked down at Rex, who sat like a stone sentinel beside him, then met her gaze again. "You're not safe here, not while they think you might talk." Emily's throat tightened. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Nowhere yet," he said, "but you don't face this alone." His words were plain, but something in them steadied her. Later that afternoon, Cole parked outside the diner where the sheriff's patrol car sat like an anchor in front. Inside, coffee steamed and conversation dipped as he entered. Sheriff Bennett looked up from his booth, his expression unreadable. Cole slid into the seat across from him. "Morning," he said. "You and I need to talk." The sheriff leaned back, arms crossed. "About what?" "About the woman you just paid a visit to," Cole said evenly. "She doesn't need threats for speaking the truth." Bennett studied him, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You're new here. This town runs on quiet. People like peace." "I'm not people," Cole replied. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "You making threats, soldier?" "No," Cole said, his tone unchanging. "Promises." For a long moment the two men sat in silence, rain ticking softly against the diner windows. Finally Bennett exhaled. "You should leave town, mister. Guys like you bring storms with them." Cole rose from the booth. Sometimes a storm's what a place needs. When he left, the room stayed quiet until the door swung shut behind him. Up on the hill, in the mayor's office lined with dark wood and glass, Travis Reed paced again, his temper raw. "He's still here," he snapped. "Everyone's talking about him. You said you'd take care of it." His father, Mayor Douglas Reed, lifted his gaze from the desk. Silver hair, cold composure. "And I will, but we won't do it your way." He pressed the intercom. "Get me Warren." 10 minutes later, Warren Hale, the deputy mayor and the family's quiet enforcer, walked in, his gray suit untouched by the weather. "You called." The mayor steepled his fingers. There's a man in town helping that woman, former SEAL, staying near the Ridge Road. Find out who he is. Make sure he understands Aspen Creek doesn't need his kind of help." Warren nodded once. "And the woman? Leave her for now. But if she talks, we bury the story before it grows legs." As the day faded, Cole and Rex sat on the truck's tailgate, overlooking the valley as mist curled between the trees. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. Rex's ears twitched with each distant sound, but he stayed calm, head resting on his paws. Cole watched the town lights flicker on through the fog, his jaw set. He'd seen this kind of place before, where fear kept people silent and power kept them small. But something about this town, this woman, this boy, made him stay. The storm was coming, and for once he didn't plan to leave before it hit. By the following evening, Aspen Creek looked peaceful on the surface. Wet streets glistening beneath a thin veil of mist, porch lights flickering through the drizzle, but beneath that calm tension hummed like a live wire. Emily Parker, the 28-year-old blonde single mother, tried to hold her routine together for Dylan, her 7-year-old son, though every small sound made her heart jump. She spent the morning at the bakery downtown, her hands moving on instinct, while her mind replayed the scene at the grocery store. By the time she left that afternoon, the sky hung heavy with rain, and across the street from her car sat a black SUV. The same model she'd seen near her house the day before, the same tinted windows. She locked the door quickly and drove off, eyes flicking to the mirror every few seconds. Miles away at the edge of the forest, Cole Harris, the Navy SEAL, finished repairing a section of his fence. Rex, the K-9, sat close by, watching the road that wound up from town. Cole noticed the vehicle before he heard it, a dark truck crawling toward his cabin, its engine low and steady. When it stopped, 2 men stepped out. The first was Warren Hale, the 43-year-old deputy mayor with slick black hair and a composed, dangerous calm. The second was a younger man in a leather jacket, head-shaved, grin mean. "Evening," Warren said, his voice smooth as polished glass. "You're Mr. Harris, I presume?" Cole wiped his hands on a rag. "That's right. You've been making an impression around here," Warren continued, "helping people who should mind their own problems. Aspen Creek doesn't need outsiders stirring the pot." Cole's tone stayed calm. "Didn't stir anything, just don't like bullies." The younger man's smirk sharpened. "You don't know who you're talking about, pal. You're lucky the boss kid didn't press charges after you threatened him." Cole looked at him steadily. "He laid hands on a woman in public. I told him to stop. That's not a threat." Warren adjusted his sleeve. "Here's how this works. Aspen Creek runs fine when everyone minds their place. Take your dog, pack your things, and move on." Cole studied him for a beat too long, rain dripping from his collar. "I've been asked to leave better places by worse men." Warren's eyes cooled. "Don't test me, Mr. Harris." "Not testing," Cole replied evenly, "just talking." At his side, Rex let out a low, controlled growl that rolled through the damp air. The younger man flinched, hand twitching near his waistband, but Warren stopped him with a quiet word. "Not here." He turned back to Cole. "Consider this a courtesy call. People who cross the reeds don't tend to stay long." Cole didn't answer, and after a moment, Warren turned toward the truck. Gravel crunched under their tires as they drove off into the mist. Cole watched until the taillights vanished, then glanced down at Rex. "They'll be back," he said softly. Rex tilted his head, ears twitching in silent agreement. That night, Emily tucked Dylan into bed early. The boy had been anxious all day, asking if the bad man would come back. She promised he wouldn't, though her voice trembled around the lie. When the house grew quiet, she sat by the window, the curtains half drawn. The black SUV was there again, parked beneath the streetlight, engine idling, headlights dim. Her fingers tightened around her phone. She thought about calling the sheriff, then stopped. She already knew who he served. A knock startled her, 3 short raps, steady, but not harsh. She froze, heart racing, until she heard a soft bark she recognized. Opening the door, she saw Cole on the porch, the streetlight catching the edge of his face. Rex stood beside him, alert and silent. "Saw the car again," Cole said quietly. "Figured I'd stop by." Relief washed over her so fast it made her dizzy. "They've been sitting there for an hour," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do." Cole glanced toward the street. "They won't try anything tonight, just trying to scare you." "It's working," she admitted. Cole nodded once. "Then let's end it." He nodded toward the door. "Mind if I take a look inside?" Emily stepped aside, and Cole entered with the quiet precision of habit. Rex followed, sniffing the corners before settling by the door like a watchman. "You live alone?" Cole asked. "Just me and Dylan," Emily said. "My husband died 3 years ago. Construction accident." Cole paused, understanding flickering in his eyes. "I'll keep watch tonight," he said. "You don't have to—" "I know," he interrupted gently, "but I will." Emily met his eyes and nodded, the fear in her chest easing just enough for her to breathe. Outside, the night deepened, cool and heavy with the smell of rain. Across the street, the SUV's lights blinked once, then went dark. Cole leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the quiet road. Rex stood beside him, still and focused. Hours passed in silence until, near midnight, the vehicle finally rolled away. Cole exhaled slowly, his jaw unclenching. "They're planning something," he murmured. Rex gave a soft grunt in reply. Inside, Emily peeked through the curtain, her pulse slowing for the first time all week. For the first time since that morning at the grocery store, she believed she and her son might be safe, at least for tonight. Outside, beneath the porch light, Cole Harris and Rex stood guard in the rain, two quiet silhouettes against the gathering storm. The next day dawned beneath a blanket of gray clouds that hung low over Aspen Creek, the kind that promised rain but never delivered. Inside her small bakery, Emily Parker tried to keep her hand steady as she kneaded dough, the rhythm of her work, the only thing holding back the fear that had followed her through the night. Cole Harris had stayed outside her home until dawn, a silent guardian beneath the porch light, and for a few hours she'd managed to sleep, knowing he was there. But now the world was awake again, and the danger felt closer. Each time the bell over the door jingled, her chest tightened. Around mid-morning it rang again, and this time the man who entered wasn't a customer. Warren Hale stepped inside, the deputy mayor's slick black hair still gleaming despite the overcast light. His smile was practiced, his movements slow and deliberate, as though he owned the space. "Ms. Parker," he greeted, "mind if I have a word?" Emily froze, wiping her hands on her apron. "If this is about what happened—" "It's exactly about that," Warren interrupted, his tone polite but lined with warning. "You've stirred quite the conversation in town. Mayor Reed is concerned. He asked me to make sure you're comfortable." She frowned. "Comfortable? His son assaulted me in public." Warren sighed like a teacher correcting a stubborn child. "That's one interpretation, but small towns twist stories fast. Wouldn't it be easier for everyone if you let this go? For your business, for your son?" Emily's jaw tightened. "Are you threatening me?" Warren smiled faintly. "Just advising. This town values peace, Ms. Parker. You don't want to be seen as the one who breaks it." The bell over the door jingled again before she could answer. Both turned as Cole Harris stepped inside, his flannel sleeves rolled to the forearms, posture calm and solid. Rex padded in beside him, fur damp from the mist, eyes sharp and watchful. Warren's smile faltered. "Mr. Harris," he said, his tone cooling, "didn't expect to see you here." Cole's gaze moved from Emily to Warren. "Didn't expect to interrupt either." Warren chuckled lightly, though the sound lacked confidence. "Just a friendly check-in." Cole's tone didn't shift. "You always threaten women before lunch, or is today special?" Warren's composure cracked. "Careful, soldier. You don't know how this town works." "I'm learning," Cole said evenly. Rex growled once. Low, controlled, the kind of sound that filled the room. Warren flinched before forcing another smile. "You think that mutt scares me?" "No," Cole replied, "but you're not the kind of man that scares him either." For a moment, silence claimed the room. Warren's mask slipped just enough for the malice beneath to show. Then he turned toward the door. "We'll talk again," he said to Emily before leaving. When the door shut, the tension bled out of the air. Emily exhaled shakily. "He'll come back," Cole nodded. "I know." "What are we supposed to do?" she asked. "Make it harder for them to act without being seen," Cole said. He glanced out the window, watching the black sedan vanish down the road. "First, we keep you and your boy safe." That afternoon, Cole drove Emily and Dylan out to his cabin along the ridge, deep among the pines where the air smelled of sap and wet earth. Dylan's laughter returned for the first time in days as Rex ran beside him through the clearing, tail-high paws kicking up needles. "He likes him," Emily said softly, her voice fragile but warm. Cole smiled faintly. "Redor, Rex doesn't take to everyone. Guess your kid's different." She looked at him with gratitude in her tired eyes. "You don't have to do this." "It's not duty," Cole said quietly. "It's right." They stood together in silence, listening to the wind move through the trees. Then Cole's expression darkened. "They'll make their next move soon. Warren doesn't take no for an answer." "You think they'll hurt us?" "They'll try fear first," Cole said. "If that fails, they'll get personal." He met her gaze. "When that happens, I'll be here." Evening descended, the sky painted in muted amber and gray. Cole started a small fire outside, its glow soft against the encroaching dark. Emily sat with Dylan beside it, watching the flame sway while Rex lay close, eyes half-lidded but alert. For a moment peace felt possible. Then came the sound, tires crunching on gravel. Cole rose instantly, every motion measured, precise. Rex followed, posture tense, ears sharp. Emily's voice trembled. "Is it them?" Cole didn't answer. He reached for his flashlight and aimed the beam toward the trees. Two vehicles idled just beyond the bend, their engines low. He counted silhouettes, 5, maybe 6 men. When one stepped out, Cole saw the smug calm of a hired hand. "Evening," the man called. "Mayor just wants a word." "Then he can come himself," Cole replied. "He's a busy man," the man said. "Oh, so am I." Rex's growl deepened, rumbling through the clearing. "Doesn't have to get messy," the man warned. "Then leave," Cole said flatly. The man hesitated, then gestured toward the others. Headlights flared to life, flooding the clearing with harsh white light. Doors opened. Boots hit gravel. Cole's instincts sharpened. 5, maybe 6, closing in. Classic intimidation formation. He stood firm. Rex shifted forward, a silent shadow at his side. "Last chance," Cole said, his voice low. "Leave now." The man's smirk faltered. He lifted his hand. An unspoken signal. It was the last mistake he made that night. Cole Harris, the Navy SEAL, didn't much like towns that ran on fear, but he understood them better than most. He knew where the thin lines of influence and convenience were strung, and he had spent a long time learning how to follow them until they led to the truth. That morning he packed a thermos, checked Rex the K9, whose tan coat shone even in the flat light, and drove down the ridge into Aspen Creek, the town already humming with the rumor of the fight on his lips. He stopped first at the gas station on Main, an aging pump island with a single attendant, Hank, the 50-year-old gray-haired clerk, who wiped his hands on his apron and watched the world with an expression that had seen too much. "You the one from the ridge?" Hank asked before Cole could speak, recognition and a caution folded together in his voice. "Depends what you heard." Cole kept his tone level. "Did anyone come by this morning asking for your hard drives?" Hank's face tightened. "Yeah. Couple of men in suits, real polite, said they were picking up tapes for an investigation." Cole folded his hands on the counter. "Names?" Hank hesitated, then shrugged. "They didn't say much. One had slicked hair, reminded me of the mayor's office types. Took the backup, too. The word hit like a cold wind. Cole's jaw set. You sure? Took him in a black SUV, plates covered. Hank rubbed his jaw. If you want to know something, Maggie Lane's been nosing around. She won't let it go. Cole nodded. Maggie Lane, the 40-year-old brunette reporter, had a reputation for not being bought and for asking the questions other people pretended not to hear. He drove to the small paper office, where Maggie sat behind a battered desk beneath stacks of unsorted clips, eyes alert and skeptical. When Cole introduced himself, he kept it short. "You been hearing things?" he asked. She looked up at him, gaze sharp as flint. "Everyone's heard things. What matters is proof." He told her about the gas station, about the people who'd taken the drives, about the way Warren Hale's suit had smelled of money and threat. Maggie listened, tapping a pen against her notepad. "Show me what you have," she said finally. "If there's footage, I'll publish it. If not, I'll dig." Cole felt a cautious hope. He left with Maggie promising to check any leads she could, and with a plan forming in the back of his mind. It led the way the old men of Aspen Creek always led, to the civic building in the town center, where cables disappeared into a basement that smelled of dust and waiting. He'd seen municipal networks in places that tried to hide things, backup servers, redundant logs, places people assumed the powerful controlled. He suspected the Reeds had pulled the footage into a municipal backup to hide it under the cloak of bureaucracy. That afternoon, he parked near the sheriff's office and watched Sheriff Cal Bennett, the 47-year-old thick-set lawman with thinning brown hair, stepping out beneath his hat, moving with that worn authority of someone who'd made compromises for a lifetime. Cole approached him casually, as if to ask directions, filling his voice with the same plain steadiness he used when he talked to people who might not be allies. "Morning," he said. "You ever wonder how often the right story gets buried?" Bennett's eyes flicked to him, unreadable. "You stirring trouble now?" the sheriff asked. "Depends on who you ask," Cole replied. He didn't accuse, he offered a simple observation. Hard drives go missing when men with suits start asking questions. For a long moment Bennett said nothing. Then he exhaled, a breath that seemed to carry more than weather. "You don't know me," Bennett said finally. "You're right that this town runs on favors, but sometimes the favors smell worse the closer you get." Cole met his gaze. "I just want the truth out. That woman and her boy don't deserve to be scared into silence." Bennett's jaw worked under the skin. "You're asking the wrong man to tell you he's clean. I'm not. I help keep peace. Sometimes that looks like protecting powerful men." Cole felt the weight of the admission like a lead glove. "So you'll help me?" he asked. Bennett looked away to the street where people moved like they were nothing but weather. "I'm not helping any man. I'm trying to stop this from getting uglier. You get the footage. I won't arrest you for going after it." Cole nodded once. "Then I'll need an opening." That night, while rain whispered against the civic building's windows, Cole moved like a shadow around the back, Rex at his heels. He slipped through a maintenance door left ajar, feet finding the path he'd learned from watching patterns of comings and goings. The basement smelled of machine oil and old paper. Lights hummed in racks. He worked fast, fingers sure, as they found the server labeled Municipal Backup. The drives were there, recently accessed, their timestamps fresh, exactly where Warren's men would have moved them to. He cloned the folders to a small encrypted drive and was almost finished when the lights flicked on and a voice behind him said, "Step away from the console." Sheriff Bennett stood in the doorway, wet from the rain, silhouette softened by the yellow light. For a terrifying second, Cole braced for a different ending. Bennett lowered his hand from his holster and met Cole's eyes. "You've got guts," the sheriff said. "Don't make me take them away." Cole didn't flinch. "The truth's already out there if someone publishes it," he said. Bennett's expression shifted. There was fatigue and a kind of quiet decision in it. "You get out of here now. I'll look the other way. Tell Maggie to post it by dawn." Cole pressed the cloned drive into his pocket and walked into the night, Rex padding beside him. Bennett turned his back and shut the door. The town would soon wake to a different sound, not gossip wrapped around fear, but evidence. By dawn, Aspen Creek woke beneath a storm that never quite broke, the clouds hanging low and gray over Main Street. The diner was packed, whispers moving faster than coffee pots. They said Cole Harris had gone mad up on the ridge, that the Navy SEAL who'd once saved lives was now a danger to everyone around him. Sheriff Cal Bennett sat behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, listening to Mayor Douglas Reed's voice drip through the line like oil. "We need control of the narrative, Cal," the mayor said. "The town's on edge. Make sure they understand this man is a threat before he becomes a hero." Bennett rubbed a hand over his tired eyes. "You're asking me to arrest the guy who defended himself." "I'm asking you to protect Aspen Creek's peace," Douglas replied. "Do your job." When the line went dead, Bennett leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling until the hum of the fluorescent lights filled the silence. He didn't like Cole Harris, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the man was right. Out on the ridge, Cole stood beside his truck, the smell of wet pine heavy in the air. Rex, the K9, sat near his boots, watching the clouds roll over the mountains. Inside the cabin, Emily Parker tried to keep her hand steady while helping her son Dylan color a picture at the table. She stepped outside quietly, joining Cole on the porch. "They're coming again, aren't they?" she asked. Cole nodded. "Already have. Lies are their first weapon." She frowned. "So what do? "We find proof," he said. "Something that ties the mayor's son to the attack." "How?" "The gas station across from the grocery store has cameras. If we're lucky, they caught it." Emily's brow furrowed. "You think it's still there?" "Not if the Reeds got to it first," Cole said, "but we'll find out." That afternoon they drove into town. Dylan stayed with a friend while Emily pulled her cap low and kept her head down. Cole parked behind the gas station, scanning the lot before stepping inside. The clerk, a man in his 50s with tired eyes, looked up in surprise. "You're the guy everyone's talking about," he said. "Depends what they're saying," Cole replied. The clerk hesitated, then leaned forward. "Didn't believe the rumors. I saw you stop that punk from hurting her. Went out for a smoke, caught it myself." Emily exhaled in relief. "Then maybe you can help us." "Wish I could," the man said, shaking his head. "Mayor's people came by this morning, took the hard drives, said it was for an investigation." Cole's jaw tightened. "Warren Hale?" The man nodded. "That's him. Had a couple of others with him. Suits, polite voices, no choices left." Cole thanked him and turned to leave, but the man called after him. "Not everyone believes their story. Some of us still got eyes." Back in the truck, Emily gripped the wheel. "They're always one step ahead." "Not always," Cole said, his voice low. "We just need a lead they can't hide." As they passed the sheriff's office, Cole noticed a familiar black sedan parked out front. Warren Hale stood beside it talking to Bennett. "They're coordinating," Cole murmured. Emily followed his gaze. "Then maybe it's time someone else saw it." "Maggie Lane," Cole said, "reporter at the paper. She's been trying to dig into the Reeds for years." "Would she listen?" "She will, if we bring her proof." That night, back on the ridge, Cole sat at the table sketching plans while the light outside faded to red. "The Civic Building has a backup server," he said. "They'd hide the footage there." Emily's heart sank. "That's breaking in." "That's getting the truth," Cole replied. "Once we have it, Maggie publishes it before they twist it again." "And if they catch you?" she asked. Cole gave a faint smile. "Then they'll wish they hadn't." After midnight, Cole moved through the shadows behind the Civic Building, Rex pacing at his heel. The town slept, its streets glistening under the distant streetlights. He waited for the security guard to finish his round, then slipped through a maintenance door. The air smelled of bleach and old paper. He followed the hum of machines down to a basement marked Server Access, Authorized personnel only. The lock took seconds. Inside, the glow of monitors painted the walls blue. Cole found the folder marked Municipal Footage Backup, then Gas Station, Maine. He plugged in a flash drive, the progress bar creeping toward completion. It was nearly done when the lights flicked on. "Step away from the computer," said a voice. Cole turned slowly. Sheriff Cal Bennett stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, hand resting near his holster. "You've got guts, soldier," the sheriff said. "I'll give you that." "You know what's going on?" Cole replied. "You've known for years." Bennett's jaw worked. "My job's to keep peace." "Peace or control?" Cole asked quietly. "There's a difference." The silence stretched thin. Finally, Bennett spoke, his voice low. "You've got 10 seconds before I call it resisting arrest." Cole yanked the flash drive free. "Then you'd better make them count." Rex moved closer, a silent barrier. Bennett didn't draw. He stepped aside instead, eyes hard but weary. "You never saw me," he said. "Now go." Cole gave a small nod and slipped into the rain, Rex close behind. The sheriff stood alone in the flickering light, listening to the echo of the storm. In a town that had forgotten courage, one man had just chosen to remember it. By dawn, the ridge above Aspen Creek was gray and still, the light weak and silver across the wet pine. Cole Harris returned to the cabin with the flash drive, warm in his pocket, dust streaking his flannel sleeves, the weariness of a man who'd spent the night running on instinct. Emily Parker met him at the door, eyes wide with hope and fear. "Did you get it?" she whispered. Cole nodded once. "Everything? Gas station footage, timestamps, faces. It shows Travis Reed starting the fight." Emily's breath shook. "Then it's over." "No," Cole said quietly. "Now it gets louder." He placed the drive beside his half-cold coffee mug. "I'm taking it to Maggie Lane before the Reeds realize it's gone." "What if they come after you?" she asked. "They already have." He glanced toward Rex, the K-9, waiting at the door like a soldier who already knew the next command. Within the hour, Cole drove into town. The streets were too quiet, curtains shifting as people peeked out. The lie had taken root. He parked behind the small newspaper office. Maggie met him at the back door, coffee in hand, worry in her face. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "The mayor's calling you dangerous." "Then he's scared," Cole replied, handing her the flash drive. Maggie plugged it in, eyes narrowing as the footage rolled. Travis Reed shoving Emily. The crowd frozen, Cole stepping in. "This will bury them," she murmured. "If I publish it, there's no going back." "Then don't wait," Cole said. Maggie's jaw tightened. "They'll come for you first." "Wouldn't be the first time," he said, turning toward the door. "Get it to 3 outlets before they shut you down." "And you?" "I'll keep them busy." Outside, Rex tensed, eyes fixed on a black SUV idling 2 blocks away. "They're moving fast," Cole muttered. He pulled onto the back road out of town. His phone buzzed, Emily's voice, breathless. "They're saying you broke into the Civic building, that you attacked the sheriff." "They're panicking," he said. "Means the truth's out." "What do we do now?" "You stay inside," he said. "I'll draw them off." He hung up before she could argue. At the mayor's office, Douglas Reed slammed his hand on his desk as the video played. "How the hell did this get out?" he snapped. Warren Hale, phone pressed to his ear, looked pale. "It's everywhere. 3 outlets, maybe more." "Shut it down," Douglas barked. "Pull the servers, block the sites." "It's too late," Warren said quietly. "They've already mirrored it." Douglas leaned forward, face hardening. "Then we end it tonight." Outside, the storm broke at last, rain pounding the cabin roof. Emily watched through the window, heart hammering. Lightning flared across the ridge, and then came the sound of doors slamming. She grabbed Dylan, pulling him close. "Under the table," she whispered. Outside, flashlights moved through the rain, beams cutting across the yard. The front steps creaked. Then a voice called from the dark. "You might want to rethink that." The light swung toward the trees. Cole Harris stood there, soaked but steady. Rex at his side, teeth bared in silence. "Told your boss to stop sending amateurs," Cole said. One of the men raised his gun, but Rex lunged first, a blur of motion and fury. The second man stumbled back, and Cole met him with a clean strike to the wrist and jaw, sending him sprawling. The last one turned to run, only to freeze as headlights washed over the clearing. A pickup skidded to a stop. Sheriff Cal Bennett stepped out, rain dripping from his hat, weapon drawn. For a moment everything stopped. The only sounds were the rain on the leaves, the low rumble of thunder, the shallow breaths of the men on the ground. Cole's eyes met the sheriff's. "You going to arrest me again?" he asked. "Not tonight," Bennett said. "I saw the footage. You were right." He looked at the men in the mud. "But you'd better clear out before Reed sends more." Cole nodded once. "Appreciate it." Bennett didn't holster his weapon right away. He walked closer, eyes flicking to Emily's cabin window, where a faint glow still showed. "You keep them safe, Harris," he said quietly. "This town's going to need you before this is over." The two men stood in silence for a long moment, the soldier who'd seen too much, and the lawman who had looked away too long. The rain blurred their outlines, washing away the line between right and wrong, until only choice remained. When the sheriff finally turned and left, his tail lights melted into the mist. Cole stayed in the yard, chest heaving with the weight of what hadn't yet come. Rex pressed against his leg, breath hot and steady in the cold air. Cole knelt, resting a hand on the dog's head. "We're not done, buddy," he murmured. At the cabin window, Emily stood motionless. She saw him like that, alone in the storm, shoulders squared against the dark, and realized how much he'd risked for people who barely knew his name. The fear in her chest didn't fade, but it changed shape. It became something heavier, something fierce. She whispered a prayer that he'd make it back from whatever came next. When Cole finally stepped inside, drenched and silent, Emily met him with a towel and a trembling smile. "Is it over?" she asked. Cole looked toward the dark road below, rain still streaming off his hair. "No," he said, "but now they know they're not the only ones who can fight back." The next morning broke in pale streaks of light that struggled through the fog still hanging over Aspen Creek. The storm had passed, but the ground was slick with mud, and the air smelled of iron and pine sap. Inside the cabin, Emily Parker, the 28-year-old blonde single mother, brewed a pot of coffee with trembling hands, the kind of shaking that comes when danger has passed, but the body hasn't yet caught up. Her 7-year-old son, Dylan, slept curled under a blanket near the fire. Rex, the K9, stretched protectively beside him. Cole Harris, the Navy SEAL, stood at the window, watching the dirt road disappear into mist. "They won't stop after last night," he said quietly. "Not men like that." Emily looked up. "What do we do?" "We get ahead of them." He turned, the faintest ghost of exhaustion in his eyes. "If the Reeds are desperate, that means they're cornered. Cornered men make mistakes." By mid-morning, the sky had begun to brighten. Cole stepped outside to check the yard, scanning for tire tracks. There were plenty, deep grooves from the SUVs that had come up the ridge, but something else caught his eye, a set of smaller prints leading away toward the woods. He crouched beside them, fingertips brushing the wet soil. "Someone stayed behind," he murmured, "watching." Rex's ears flicked at the same time, confirming what Cole already knew. He looked back at the cabin. "Stay inside. Lock the door." He followed the trail into the trees, moving quietly through the dripping underbrush. 50 yards out, he found a discarded radio, military-grade, encrypted. A frequency was still active, the faint hiss of static, and a half-muted voice saying, He's alive. Tell Hale it didn't work." Cole shut it off and pocketed it. Proof. He returned to the cabin half an hour later, rainwater streaking his jacket. "They reported in," he told Emily. "Warren Hale's still running the cleanup. If that call gets traced, it'll lead straight to him." She stared. "Can we do anything with that?" "Maggie can." That afternoon, Cole and Emily drove into town again, this time through the back roads where the trees formed dark tunnels of shadow. The air was thick with tension. News had spread of the fight on the ridge, but no one knew the truth yet. When they reached the edge of Main Street, they parked behind the newspaper office. Maggie Lane, the 40-year-old brunette reporter, met them at the rear door, her expression drawn but resolute. "I heard about last night," she said. "You're lucky to be standing." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Cole replied, handing her the radio. "Found this near the ridge." Hale's voice came through. "He's the one coordinating the hit." Maggie turned it over carefully. "If we can match the signal to his phone records, it's over. But I'll need someone on the inside." Cole gave a grim smile. "I might know just the man." That evening, Sheriff Cal Bennett sat alone in his office, his badge glinting under the weak light. The phone rang, and he ignored it twice before finally answering. "Bennett." On the other end, Cole's voice came steady but low. "You want to make this right, Sheriff? I've got proof Hale's behind last night." There was silence, then a tired sigh. "You have no idea what you're asking." "Yeah, I do," Cole said. "Oh, Jake, I'm asking you to choose which side of the law you be really on." Another pause, then the faint creak of Bennett's chair. "Where do we meet?" An hour later, under a sky still bruised from the storm, Bennett pulled up to the old sawmill on the outskirts of town. Cole was waiting by his truck, Rex sitting alert beside him. He handed over the radio without ceremony. "Trace it. Log the transmission time. It came from Hale's men." Bennett examined it, jaw tight. "If I do this, there's no going back." "There's been no going back since the day you looked the other way," Cole said evenly. The sheriff met his gaze and nodded once. "I'll call the State Bureau tonight. They'll move fast if I bring them something solid." "Do it before Reed realizes the story's real," Cole said. By the time they returned to the cabin, the town below had begun to shift. Maggie's first article about Hale's corruption went online, followed by leaked call records and copies of financial transfers linking the deputy mayor to the Reed's shell companies. For the first time, people in Aspen Creek stopped whispering and started talking, the diner filled with nervous speculation. Workers at the gas station refused to answer the mayor's calls. By sunset, the Reed's house on the hill was surrounded by news vans and flashing cameras. Inside the cabin, Emily stood on the porch with a blanket around her shoulders, watching the faint glow of the town lights below. "Do you think it'll stick this time?" she asked. Cole nodded slowly. "Truth always sticks. Sometimes it just takes longer than it should." He leaned against the railing, watching Rex patrol the edge of the yard. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked. She looked surprised. "All the time," she admitted. "But Dylan's roots are here. Maybe now it'll be different." Cole gave a faint smile. "Maybe." That night, sleep finally came without nightmares. For the first time in days, there were no headlights cutting through the dark, no engines on the road, only the sound of the wind moving through wet pine. Cole sat by the dying fire, half asleep in the chair, Rex dozing at his feet. He didn't notice Emily come out until she placed a mug beside him. "Coffee?" she said softly. "Even at midnight?" "It's what you've been running on," she replied with a small smile. He took it, the warmth of the cup bleeding into his hands. "You should rest," he said. "So should you." For a while they sat in silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Outside, the last clouds cleared, revealing a thin strip of moonlight across the ridge. Emily looked at him and said quietly, "You could have left already. Why stay?" Cole's eyes stayed on the horizon. "Because I've learned something about towns like this. Evil doesn't vanish when you cut off its head. It fades, hides, waits. Someone's got to make sure it doesn't crawl back." She nodded slowly, understanding. "Then we'll wait with you." He gave a faint smile. "Just for a while," he said. And as the cabin grew quiet again, Cole reached down to rest a hand on Rex's neck. The dog stirred, but didn't rise, only leaned closer. "Almost done, boy," Cole murmured. "Almost." The wind carried the smell of smoke and pine through the open window, and somewhere down in the valley, the first police sirens began to wail, a sound not of danger this time, but of justice finally catching up. By morning, the rain had stopped, leaving Aspen Creek, Colorado, wrapped in mist. The storm had broken more than the weather. It had cracked the illusion of the town's peace. The video Maggie Lane, the 40-year-old brunette reporter, released the night before had gone viral, spreading far beyond their small valley. National outlets picked it up. Travis Reed, the 20-year-old mayor's son in an expensive suit, was exposed for his assault and the quiet corruption of his father. Mayor Douglas Reed, the 54-year-old silver-haired politician, was suddenly under scrutiny. Emily Parker, the 28-year-old blonde single mother, sat at the kitchen table of the cabin with her 7-year-old son, Dylan, listening to the radio's news update. The anchors spoke the names she had whispered in fear for years, now spoken aloud for the world to hear. Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't allowed herself to cry until then. For the first time in what felt like forever, those tears weren't from fear, they were from release. The cabin felt different that morning. The air was cold but alive, touched with the scent of rain and pine. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, casting a faint orange light across the wood floor. Outside, Cole Harris, the Navy SEAL, stood beside Rex, the K-9, his gaze on the valley below. The mist swirled slowly between the trees, wrapping the world in a fragile calm that felt earned. He wasn't smiling, but there was a quiet ease in the way his shoulders lowered, the kind that comes when a man's purpose, even for a brief moment, has been fulfilled. Rex leaned against his leg, as if feeling the same peace. Sheriff Cal Bennett, the 47-year-old thick-set lawman with thinning brown hair, arrived an hour later in his patrol truck. He stepped out slowly, hat in hand, his face lined with fatigue and something close to regret. "It's over," he said quietly. "State investigators came in last night. The Reeds are done." "Oh, both of them?" Cole asked. The sheriff nodded. Warren Hale, the 43-year-old deputy mayor with slick black hair, tried to run, but they caught him outside Denver. Douglas Reed's been arrested for obstruction and conspiracy. Travis is in custody. Emily came to the porch, her voice soft. "They won't be back?" "No," Bennett said. "Not this time." For a long moment none of them spoke. The wind carried the scent of wet pine and earth. Dylan opened the cabin door wider, peeking out at Rex, the K-9, who wagged his tail once in greeting. The boy laughed, a small sound, but it filled the clearing like sunlight breaking through fog. Cole knelt beside Rex, scratching behind his ears. "We did good, didn't we, buddy?" he said quietly. The dog gave a low, contented grunt, then pressed his head against Cole's hand. Bennett watched them, his usual hard edge softened. "You planning on sticking around?" Cole looked toward the town and the valley below, the church steeple glinting in the weak light. "Maybe for a while," he said. "Places like this need time to heal." "They'll remember what you did here," the sheriff said, "even the ones who were afraid to speak up." Cole shook his head. "They don't need to remember me, just what happens when good people stay quiet." Bennett gave a slow nod, then tipped his hat to Emily. "You take care of yourself, ma'am." When the sheriff drove off, his truck disappeared into the mist like a ghost of the old town. Emily stepped closer to Cole. "So what now?" she asked. Cole looked down at her, a rare trace of warmth softening his eyes. "Now you live," he said. "You and Dylan get your peace back." "And you?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "There's always another town, another fight, but for now this one's won." She reached out, her hand brushing his arm. "Thank you," she said simply. He nodded once, the quiet kind of acknowledgement that carried more than words. They stood there for a while in the thin morning light, neither rushing to fill the silence. The sound of the dripping eaves and the occasional chirp of a bird were all that remained of the night. Storm. It felt like the world, for once, was breathing again. The day moved slowly after that. By afternoon the mist had burned off, leaving the valley washed clean. The bakery reopened under Emily's name, and when she walked through its doors again, the same people who once looked away now greeted her with hesitant smiles. The smell of bread and cinnamon filled the air, and for the first time in months, laughter returned to the shop. Sheriff Bennett made sure the investigation stayed transparent, and Maggie Lane's articles became the talk of the county. Aspen Creek began to feel like a town again, not a place ruled by fear. People left flowers on the steps of the cabin where the truth had been fought for, and someone painted a small mural on the bakery wall, a silhouette of a man and his dog beneath the mountains, with 3 words written beneath it, "Courage lives here." Weeks later, on a clear evening, Emily and Dylan stood outside the cabin, watching the sunset fade over the mountains. Cole loaded his truck with his few belongings. Rex, the K9, sitting in the passenger seat, head out the window. "You're really leaving," Emily said, her voice calm but heavy. "It's what I do," Cole said. "You don't have to," she said softly. "You could stay." Cole hesitated, then gave her a small, tired smile. "If I stay too long, I stop being useful. The next place will need me." Dylan ran up, holding out a folded piece of paper, a drawing of Cole, Rex, and a big bright sun above the ridge. "So you don't forget us," the boy said. Cole took it carefully, his voice low. "I won't." He crouched to Dylan's level for a moment. "You be good to your mom, all right? And take care of this place." Dylan nodded solemnly, then hugged Rex tightly before stepping back. Cole climbed into the truck, gave Rex a pat, and started the engine. The gravel crunched softly under the tires as he pulled away. Emily stood watching until the sound faded into the distance, the drawing still clutched in her hand. The last light of day touched the pines, and for the first time in months, Aspen Creek felt safe. In town, people talked about the stranger who came and changed everything, the man and his dog who reminded them that courage didn't to come from power, but from doing what's right when it's hardest. And somewhere beyond the valley, Cole Harris, the Navy SEAL, drove toward the horizon with Rex, the K9, beside him, ready for wherever the next fight for justice would begin. If this story of courage and justice moved you, please share it so others can remember that one voice, one act, can still make a difference.